Well, great pleasure to be here. Not the bringer of good news, unfortunately, in some respects. Scottish salmon are not in a good state, as you will be aware. This is a graph that you will have seen many times, and I'm afraid it continues in a similar downward direction. This is the numbers of salmon returning to Scotland's coasts. For a period of time, there was a reduction in coastal nets, which enabled us to actually increase slightly numbers of spawners, but that is no longer possible. All of that contingency has been used, and so now numbers of spawning fish are decreasing along with returns to the coast. In terms of spring rod catch, it continues to decline. After a period where there appeared to be some stability, we seem to have a further downward trend. And of course, that means that the measures for no killing of salmon early in the year are retained. Where we have data from traps, so we can actually count numbers of fish, you can see that the trends from the traps for spring, these are spring fish on the Dean, are very similar to the rod catches, showing that we should take these catch signals very seriously. It's not just numbers of salmon that are important and declining, it's also the sizes of the fish. Now, there's a very important project kicked off, funded by Scottish Government with Fisheries Management Scotland, looking at collecting scales from salmon in selective catchments in Scotland to improve our data in this area. Nora will give a little bit more information on this in a subsequent talk. But suffice to say that sizes of fish are declining, so numbers and sizes. I won't go into details of conservation status, you'll have heard this before, but clearly with numbers of salmon decreasing, the numbers of rivers that are grade 3 in poor condition are also declining. Although important to note that in some areas we still have stocks that are sufficiently healthy that they are in good conservation status. So we have time, we need to act. As already mentioned, IUCN have recognised the situation with salmon internationally and in Great Britain and have reassessed their status allocation for the fish. And as we've also heard, and you may have seen, they're available online, the provisional rod catch statistics for last year do not make good reading. Substantial declines from the previous year. So we are in a seriously declining situation. Which leads us on to the state of salmon in terms of what can we do about it. Well, that's a bit more positive. There's a good understanding of the pressures that are affecting salmon. There's some good work, again, between Marine Scotland, now Marine Directorate, and Fisheries Management Scotland, taking the best available information, combination of science and best local information to assess pressures on the fish. And we have a good idea. I won't go into detail at this point, but suffice to say that there are many pressures acting in different areas of catchments. And these are pressures that in some cases can be alleviated. And of course, this is the focus of the Wild Salmon Strategy and the implementation plan. We obviously need to consider the feasibility of addressing pressures, the cost-benefit, prioritisation, action and adaptive management. But I would echo Alan's comments. We just need to act where we can, and we need to act quickly, so we should look for opportunities. Essential that there's join up amongst organisations and that we're using best available evidence to make sure that we do things effectively and don't fritter resources. So to help in this process, we have the Implementation Plan Delivery Group, as was mentioned earlier, supported by the Science and Evidence Board. This is to try and make sure that we bring together the best available evidence, and also where we're looking for research to fill gaps where we critically need to know how best to move forwards, that we're doing it effectively, that we're using resources as well as we can. It's absolutely crucial at this point that we are efficient. The board has representatives from across the wild salmon management sector, and importantly, the excellent scientific support from the Freshwater Fisheries Laboratory of Marine Directorate. Some superb staff who really do understand salmon, decades of experience that we can bring to bear at this point in time. And of course, we have some very good academic and management inputs from other areas that we're trying to corral in this group. And really important also is ideal science has its part, of course it does. But many of these pressures we've been researching for decades and we don't know the precise answers. And it's vital that we use best available information, and we're bringing in scientific investigation where it's important, and it can have an effect in the timescales that we're working to. And so for this group, we're not looking for the ideal, for the excellent outputs. We're looking for time-limited delivery of targeted outputs so that we can bring science and evidence to practical action as quickly as possible. The topics we're looking at the moment, well, we've already published advice on constraining angling at high temperatures. We're looking at the moment at stocking. Again, as Alan mentioned, very topical. Is there a case where populations are critically low for stocking that otherwise we perhaps wouldn't recommend? And what about gene banking? What's the role of gene banking? How does that link in? Harmonisation and best use of monitoring and science within public sector bodies and bringing in the private sector is an area we're commencing. We'll be looking at additions of large woody debris to rivers, which is quite a contentious area at the moment. And also some quite important aspects of modelling sequential pressures on salmon survival, which has raised its head in the issue of impacts of sea lice, but is actually quite important in other contexts. So this is trying to work out how best to use information for assessing pressures. And then we also have a bit of work on sea lice to do. So this is our current list, but there's plenty of other work to be done. So I'll stop there because there's some interesting science coming up in the next couple of talks, and there's not much more to say. Salmon are in a bad state. But what's really encouraging is we now have the systems in place to act and really do as much as we can about it. And some thanks to colleagues in the Marine Directorate and to the board members of the Science and Evidence Board. Thank you very much.